Okay, hello everyone. There is pizza in the back. Get it quick. Let's go around, do hello, starting with Erica.
Erica McConnell, Office of Economic and Community Development. Amanda Moser, Clerk's Office.
Mandy Honest, Clerk's Office.
John Weddleton.
Elby Green Janice.
Big Green.
Sherry Easy.
Bill Steyer.
Francis McLaughlin, Planning Department.
Brian Thorpe, Party Herbery.
And Bill Paul, Municipal Attorney.
So we're all that's left?
And Pete Peterson, Forrest Dunbar. Carrying pizzas.
Tim Steele's back there too.
And Tim Steele. Okay, so we have one item in front of us today. This is Arctic Herbery for a retail establishment at the Community and Economic Development Committee. Yesterday, we recommended approval of it with the Planning Department's conditions, except for the conditions that are in the AO that was given us with the packet. And significantly, it did not include the Planning Department's recommendation to postpone our action until November 1st. And that was, we agreed to do that because we felt there was an increase in community participation to some extent, and also some increase in parking. Brad?
Mr. Chair, I see some quizzical looks from people that didn't attend, so I could just say that, so this is Arctic Herbery's application for a retail establishment. They're already approved for cultivation. The floor plan is the same as what you approved previously. The site plan exterior to the building changed a little bit. They added a parking area behind the business, and they went from 3 parking spaces to 5 parking spaces. Now, at the time that the staff report was written, we had concerns about neighborhood responsibility planning and the demand for parking, at least temporarily, if they end up being the first retail sales establishment to open. And so we recommended postponement of the case for a month for them to resolve those 2 issues. Now, since we did that and we informed the applicant of what we were going to be recommending, he went and obtained the neighborhood responsibility plan signed by the Taco Campbell Community Council president, and he also obtained approval from the traffic department for 6 additional temporary parking spaces behind the building. So it would appear that he's resolved those 2 concerns that the planning department had. So just the same way that Mr. Weddleton explained, the assembly resolution is for approval of this. It's just the planning department recommendation, which is now dated a little bit, recommended postponement. If you haven't answered any questions, the applicant's here too.
John.
Mr. Training?
Define temporary for me.
Well, code, I think, talks about temporary, but it certainly will be able to be managed in accordance with the code, because it'll be a gated area. He can open and close it, as needed.
I just want to make sure we have a way to protect the public from traffic jams in Arcade. If the applicant decides not to open it up, we've got a problem on our hands. So I would like a time period defined, 2 months, 3 months. I have a problem when it just says as needed.
Through the chair, Mr. Traney, so I don't think that there's any problem with the applicant choosing to open this temporary parking, because it's in his interest. I mean, it's his business, he's going to be there. He wants to allow this parking. It's more about municipal restrictions on paid parking lots and that. But it says a temporary parking lot is allowed to be unpaved, and that's what he's going to do. He's got a gravel lot back there, and so he can do it. I think that the need for that may be partially dependent on how long it takes other retail shops to open up as well. Do you see? It's really something that's hard to guess about.
He said at our meeting he was going to have flaggers out there. Is there any restriction on using flaggers to direct traffic? Any public safety concern using flaggers, or is it just you can get anybody you want to put a flag out there?
My only expertise is with Title 21, and to my knowledge, there's nothing in the land use planning regulations that that talks about you know, valet parkers or flaggers. But I read in the newspaper about how people aren't supposed to be in the right of way, you know, panhandlers and stuff like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Francis, I was wondering, according to code, looking at the square footage that he's going to have, does the number of parking spaces meet the requirement?
It does.
Okay, so legally, he has enough parking to open the retail business.
Right, so the planning department's concern about parking was about this, you know, forecasting this temporary need for additional parking. The site meets the parking requirement. He's got a legal parking lot already approved. It's been issued a building permit. The question is, well, does the assembly want to require additional parking? And the planning department's concern wanted to stay more strict with the code. It meets the parking requirement, but we think that there could be significant adverse impacts on neighboring businesses and neighborhoods based on the temporary demand. They're the only retail store open in the city. Now, we don't know that they'll be the first one and only one open, but this is the first one before you, and if they were to open and the others were to be delayed, then it would be really popular. And so we're just trying to be realistic about it, and that's why he's taken this step to get approval for additional parking.
Great.
And he's working on other sites. I mean, you can ask these questions again. We talked about it at the committee meeting, but he's trying to get agreements with 2 other properties for additional parking. There's also, you know, an athletic field down the street that's got a parking lot too. That you know, there's no baseball going on right now.
That's true.
And I haven't offered that as a legal parking area, but you know, there's.
It could be used for overflow or something.
Well, I don't know if it could or not, but it's there.
Okay. Great,
How
thank
many
you.
spots are there?
It's an unpaved parking lot associated with the baseball field. Nobody's playing baseball right
About
now.
how many spots? 10?
30.
30? About 30 at that.
25.
Fourth?
So Francis, I wonder if you could indulge me a little bit right now and sort of use this as an educational moment for myself, and it relates to this, but you know, under code, he needs, I don't know, 4 or 5, whatever it is, he meets the regulatory requirements for parking. What provision of code allows us, or the charter or whatever it is, allows us to say, despite the fact that you are complying with the law, we have decided that you must have more parking? And if he says no, then can we legally deny his license?
Can I take that?
Yeah.
So this is a discretionary approval, and it's not automatic that if you just meet certain provisions of code, you get your approval. It's a discretionary approval that belongs to the assembly. There is a section in chapter 3. Let's see. The assembly may approve a special land use permit for marijuana if, in the judgment of the assembly, the application meets the following approval criteria. So you have 8 approval criteria that you're evaluating the application against. One of those criterion is the use is consistent, well, actually a couple of them are consistent with the Title 21 requirements, but then there's other discretionary things, and where we're kind of working on this parking thing is any significant adverse impacts anticipated to result from the use can and will be mitigated or offset to the maximum extent feasible. So the assembly does have the authority to place additional conditions on any application that comes before you if you can tie it to reasonably anticipated adverse impacts
And
above and beyond what is the minimum required by the code.
so that's very interesting to me. I didn't realize that the entire basically body of law when it relates to marijuana is discretionary. If we may do this, then we may not do this with regard to slugs. Is that right?
You have a floor, you have standards that you put into code that said, okay, here's our minimum, this is what we expect everybody to do, and then you can add anything else that you think is reasonable
So,
to
right.
address the approval
So
criteria.
we can't approve marijuana in certain cases but we also could choose never to approve any marijuana business based on the way we've written the code. And so I guess my follow-up question to that is, if we were to decide we are not going to approve any marijuana retail licenses, and we can come up with some reason for that, would we run afoul of state law? Because the state, at the state level, they have legalized marijuana and retail marijuana in the city, well, in the state rather. Could we deny every retail license without running afoul of state law?
I believe yes. But I just
Do you,
so we're open
Mr.
to
Paulson,
here.
do you have any,
Take a bite.
do you have any thoughts on that?
I believe the answer is yes. I would want to take a pass at looking at the state law regulations again before giving a definitive answer, because there may be a mechanism whereby we would have to officially opt out of one of the four types of facilities. So it may not be as simple as saying we passed a law over everyone. But I can give you a full answer now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Seal?
I'm sorry that I had to duck out here, but I just want to make sure that we've crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is with regard to the Arctic facility. Are you comfortable with where we are in terms of what's proposed? I mean, are we getting into trouble? Did we postpone the start date? Was that one of the items that we had in here? And so it's just, we're banking on the additional parking that they have to be able to cover what's going to come about, if they open here, if they are the first ones to open. And did we ask about product, where they're going to get their product? Do they have enough that if they get a run in the store, they'll have the product?
Is that a direct question?
Yeah.
What is the question?
My question in terms of product is, you're going to be the first one open, and you've got a relatively small operation. If everybody decides they're going to go out the first day and pass a product, do you have enough, or do you have to source from other?
I don't have enough for that source. I'm working on nailing some guys down. They've been a little, use this word shady about actually making commitments to me of selling the product. And a lot of that is because they don't want to commit without a testing, the testing result, knowing what they're growing and what they, how good of a product they have. So people have been a little bit slow to promise me anything with the product yet. And it will be hinged on our testing lab opening and testing the product before the basis.
So you don't have an opening date at this point, presumably?
Not even close. As I suggested yesterday in the economic meeting, what I would like to do is, since I get the CO, is actually open my doors into a retail location that doesn't go to sell and allow people to come in, take a look, and go to the parking lot.
Little
talk
window
with me.
shopping.
Well, they'll be shopping at the windows, although really will be in there. Maybe some rolling papers or pipes or something like that. But I would like to open it just so people have can get in the habit of coming to talk to them, so that's my goal the next couple weeks as I get the CO, is to actually just open the doors. So it's not such a huge.
So you've got a good opportunity to be the first one to start.
As long as I can, it's depending on the testing lab, but it really will be all depending on the testing.
Yeah, I am concerned, quite frankly, in terms of the neighborhood and the concerns that the neighbors have raised, that residential neighbors across the street. I'm glad you got some additional parking. I hope that you look around and see if you can have some emergency parking with some of the neighbors as well.
I'm working on a couple of different plans. Tonight I'll be signing an agreement for 8 more parking spaces that will require a shuttle. And the meeting I had planned yesterday with my neighbor didn't happen. We're still going to try to meet today over 4 to 8 that are at the store. I'm still working on parking. I'm doing everything I can to address it. And I believe before I open, I'll have a definitive plan. I did yesterday when we were in the meeting submit my parking plan as a part of the package I believe we should have. That's spelled out there. That's what it takes to make it.
Good. Well, you're the test case, and we would like to have everything go smooth.
I would too.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Is there any other comments? I have one question. What's the shortest practical pedestrian route to the park? How far?
I'm not entirely sure where this
There's a
is.
map in your, there's a map in your packet. And
Our
Okay.
pick is a minor arterial, so even if we do make changes to our discussions of where you cross major arterials, that wouldn't apply in this situation, so you would have a crosswalk at any intersection along the park.
I just wanted to know if they can use it. Is it quarter mile or
It's-
500 feet for
It's
parking?
580 feet to 582 feet to the closest corner post. However, the
To
way
that
it was
park.
measured, however, the way it was measured by the city, it's about 780 feet to go to the
Right.
to go around and actually enter not the post. So it's outside 500 posts.
But reasonably close for people to use it for parking
I
on
have not
opening
wanted
day.
to bring up that actually
Because that's a protected. Yeah,
Yeah,
gotcha.
So I would want to suggest that, hey, I got a park next door, it's got a bunch of parking, but I've got a park next door, I got a bunch of parking, since you got.
Good point. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, I guess we're done.
See you Tuesday.